Hello and welcome to my channel, dear viewers. Today, I'll be uncovering two shocking stories that even the most experienced investigators found deeply unsettling. These events will send shivers down your spine. They left a lasting mark on history and still intrigue minds to this day. Please support my channel by liking and subscribing, and let's get started. Today, I will tell you a chilling story from the quiet town of Brookfield, located in the state of Wisconsin, USA. Brookfield is a place where many people come to relax. Shopping, dining, entertainment, all of this is available here. At the same time, the town is renowned for its tranquility and comfortable atmosphere for living. But on Friday, November 16th, 2018, this idyllic peace was shattered by a strange noise emanating from a residential area. One of the local residents, a man, woke up in the middle of the night to sounds resembling heavy thuds. It sounded like someone was moving heavy furniture. At first, he tried to ignore it and go back to sleep. But you know how it is. Once you hear a noise like that, it seems to grow louder and louder. Sleep was no longer an option. The man decided to investigate where the strange sound was coming from. Listening carefully, he realized the source was very close. Apparently, the noise was coming from the house next door. What are they doing in their house in the middle of the night? The man wondered. But then a thought struck him. Wait, isn't the house next door supposed to be empty right now? This was the house where Madeline Wagner and her roommate lived. Typically, the house was vacant from Friday to Sunday. Sometimes it was empty as early as Thursday evening. Madeline's roommate would leave every week to visit her family, and Madeline herself, not fond of staying alone, would spend her weekends with friends. So by all accounts, the house should indeed have been unoccupied that Friday night. The man's suspicions grew stronger, and he opened his window to look outside. However, nothing unusual caught his eye, except for one thing. Parked in front of Madeline's house was an unfamiliar black Toyota SUV. Brookfield was a small town with a population of around 6,000 people, where most residents knew each other. Everyone was well aware that Madeline's house was usually empty on weekends. Seeing an unfamiliar vehicle in such a town was unusual. The man was almost certain the car belonged to an outsider. Still, calling the police just because of a strange car seemed like an overreaction. Besides, the noise soon stopped. Ah, it's probably nothing, he thought, and went back to bed. Sunday, November 18th arrived. Madeline's roommate returned home. As soon as she approached the house, she noticed something unusual. The front door was ajar. This was strange. Madeline was always meticulous about locking the doors, especially when she was home alone. Even when leaving, she double-checked the lock multiple times. "Madeline, are you home? Why is the door unlocked?" she called out. There was no answer. Assuming Madeline might be asleep, the roommate headed to her bedroom. What she saw there shook her to the core. Madeline was lying on the bedroom floor. She wasn't moving. The roommate rushed to check if she was alive, but it was too late. Madeline was dead. The police were immediately called and an investigation began. The autopsy revealed harrowing details. Madeline had suffered a brutal beating, followed by strangulation. Afterward, a severe blow to her head with a blunt object caused her death. The noises the neighbor had heard were likely the sounds of the attack. The last time Madeline was seen alive was on the evening of November 15th, when her roommate left the house. It was Thursday evening. While the police questioned Madeline's roommate, the male neighbor also provided his testimony about the strange noises he had heard that night and the black Toyota SUV he had seen parked in front of the house. But when the roommate heard this, her face turned pale. Nervously, she said, "I think I know who did this." The roommate pointed to a possible suspect, Madeline's husband, a Korean man named Kim Song-gun, with whom she was in the process of divorcing. It was because of him that Madeline was so afraid to stay home alone and always made sure to lock the doors. She had been living in constant fear of her husband. With this information, the police immediately made Kim Song-gun the primary suspect. His vehicle matched the black Toyota spotted at the crime scene. Moreover, at the time of the murder, he was under a court-issued restraining order to stay away from Madeline. Suspicious, isn't it? But why had their marriage ended in divorce? The answer lay in a history of abuse. Kim Song-gun had repeatedly beaten Madeline, and after years of suffering, she finally filed for divorce. Madeline was a strong woman. Right after high school, she enlisted in the military, where she served for several years, eventually achieving the rank of sergeant. After her service, she decided to take a brief break, and it was during this time that she met Kim Song-gun at a party with friends. For Madeline, living in Wisconsin, a state with very few Koreans, meeting someone from a different culture felt exciting and refreshing. What began as simple curiosity during their conversations quickly grew into a close bond. At first glance, everything seemed perfect. After a few meetings, Madeline and Kim Song-gun developed a mutual fondness that soon blossomed into romantic feelings. At one point, Kim confessed his love for her, and they officially became a couple. However, a problem soon arose. Kim's visa was nearing its expiration, and he was required to return to Korea. For the young couple, this meant separation, something neither of them could bear to face. So they found what seemed to be the perfect solution: marriage. It was undoubtedly a rushed decision, but they both thought, we're planning to get married eventually, so why not now? In 2016, they officially registered their marriage, allowing Kim Song-gun to extend his visa and remain in the United States. However, since the marriage was done hastily, they didn't organize a wedding ceremony. Without much preparation, they began their life together in Brookfield. At first, their relationship seemed idyllic, filled with love and happiness. They dreamed of a bright future, and it seemed as though everything was falling perfectly into place. But that illusion of happiness didn't last long. Over time, conflicts began to arise in the relationship between Madeline and Kim Song-gun. One day, a credit card statement arrived at their home, and Madeline decided to take a closer look. What she saw shocked her. The total amount on the bill was staggeringly high. She began going through the charges line by line and discovered that the money had been spent on clubs and bars in a Korean neighborhood. It was clear these weren't her expenses. As it turned out, all of the charges had been made by her husband. In the heat of the argument, Kim Song-gun lost control and slapped Madeline across the cheek. She froze in shock, but that wasn't enough for him. He began to beat her. His violence was so brutal that Madeline begged him to stop, pleading for mercy. Only then, upon hearing her desperate cries, did he finally stop. Horrified by what had happened, Madeline knew she could no longer stay with this man. She made a firm decision to leave him for good. The very next day, Kim Song-gun fell to his knees and began begging for forgiveness. He assured Madeline that he deeply regretted what had happened, that it was a mistake, and that it would never happen again. He seemed genuinely remorseful. Madeline and Kim Song-gun had not been married for long, and seeing him plead so earnestly, she relented. She decided to forgive him, thinking it was a one-time incident. However, from that moment, their relationship began to change. Kim Song-gun, sensing he could get his way through force, became increasingly controlling. It was as though he believed he could now rule over Madeline through threats or physical violence. At one moment, Madeline couldn't hold back any longer and screamed, "If that's how it is, let's get a divorce." Her words only enraged Kim Song-gun further. He shot back with threats. "If you want a divorce, then pay my parents back every cent they spent on the wedding." Then he lost control. His fury boiled over and he began beating her again. This time, his punches landed on her stomach, her torso, delivering blow after blow with his fists. The situation was becoming increasingly dangerous. Madeline realized that, at some point, this could end with her death. She tried to run, but Kim Song-gun caught up to her, grabbed her by the neck, and began choking her until she lost consciousness. When she came to sometime later, she used what little strength she had left to send a desperate message to a friend asking for help. Her friend, alarmed by the distressing message, immediately rushed to her house. He helped her escape and promptly called the police. Kim Song-gun was arrested on charges of attempted murder, threats, and assault. Following this, Madeline filed for divorce and began preparing to move to Minnesota to live with her parents. While Kim Song-gun was in custody, he persistently requested to meet with Madeline. He claimed he wanted to apologize and have a conversation. Despite the horrors she had endured, Madeline agreed to the meeting. However, it became clear that his true intention wasn't to apologize. It was an attempt to persuade her into reaching a settlement. The police strongly warned Madeline. Kim Song-gun was extremely dangerous, unpredictable, and she should under no circumstances agree to any compromise with him. However, when Madeline saw him in the jail cell, she couldn't suppress her emotions. despite her fear, she still felt love for him. She pitied him and didn't want him to remain incarcerated. As a result, she agreed to his terms, and the case transitioned to a civil settlement. Kim Song-gun paid a fine of $15,000, approximately 2 million won, and was released under a non-custodial arrangement for further proceedings. The police, aware of his dangerous nature, insisted on strict precautionary measures. He was issued a restraining order, prohibiting him from approaching Madeline, and was outfitted with an electronic ankle monitor to track his movements. Kim Song-gun was fitted with an electronic ankle monitor to track his movements, ensuring he couldn't approach Madeline. However, upon learning of the forced divorce, he flew into a rage. In November 2018, seemingly out of spite, he transferred all the money from their joint bank account into his personal one. It was likely an attempt to provoke Madeline, but when she didn't react, his anger only deepened and he began plotting her murder. But how could he approach her with the monitor in place? According to the investigators' report, the monitor triggered an alert on the day of the murder. When authorities contacted Kim Song-gun, he claimed that the device's battery was likely malfunctioning. An investigator visited his home, replaced the battery, and informed him that the monitor would be replaced entirely in a few days. The incident was closed without reviewing his movements on the day in question. Later, when the case was escalated to a serious investigation, the police seized the monitor for further analysis. They discovered evidence of tampering with the GPS module. A detailed examination revealed that, on the day of the murder, Kim Song-gun had been within a 400-meter radius of Madeline's home. This information became a critical piece of evidence linking him to the crime. Thus, the police gathered enough evidence to detain Kim Song-gun for further investigation. During an examination, scratches and bruises were found on his hands, consistent with delivering powerful blows. However, the most damning evidence was found on his phone. His search history included terms such as how to remove an electronic ankle monitor, arterial bleeding, and what happens if you slit someone's throat with a knife. These searches directly indicated his premeditation for murder. On November 20th, after a lengthy interrogation, Kim Song-gun confessed to murdering his wife, Madeline. However, his statement was shocking. He declared that he wanted to return to Korea to face punishment under Korean law. Naturally, this request was denied. Kim Song-gun was charged with first-degree murder and 2 counts of aggravated assault. After a 2-year trial, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The motives behind his desire to be tried in Korea were clear. Korean laws might have been less severe for him. However, justice prevailed, and he faced the full consequences of his actions. This case serves as yet another stark reminder of the grave issue of domestic violence and intimate partner homicides. Such crimes occur across the globe, including in our own communities. Places that should be the safest and filled with love too often become arenas of cruelty and tragedy. Particularly disheartening is the thought that if the anomalies with the ankle monitor had been addressed in time, this murder might have been prevented. Could this tragedy have been avoided? Despite all the pain her husband inflicted because he was her spouse and a part of her family, Madeline forgave him time and again. Yet in the end, she lost her life at his hands. May her soul rest in peace. Don't go anywhere. The second story is about to begin. How did you feel about the first one? Share your thoughts in the comments. I always enjoy reading what you have to say. Have you ever wondered what distinguishes a premeditated crime from an accidental one? According to dictionary definitions, a premeditated crime is when the perpetrator deliberately identifies their target and meticulously plans how to execute the crime. In contrast, an accidental crime occurs in a moment of losing control over oneself. While the methods of committing these crimes vary, the extent of harm to the victim and the condition of the crime scene also significantly differ depending on whether the crime was planned or spontaneous. So, which type of crime tends to be more brutal? Typically, it is the premeditated crime. These offenses are often committed against a backdrop of animosity, and in such cases, the level of harm inflicted on the victim can be far more savage. Therefore, for law enforcement and profilers, the degree of injury to the victim's body serves as a crucial factor in determining the direction of an investigation during its initial stages. On August 19, 2018, around 9:40 in the morning, a park ranger patrolling the grounds of Seoul National Park in Gwacheon Gyeonggi Province, stumbled upon a suspicious plastic bag nestled in the bushes beside a path leading to the Rosary's parking lot. As he drew closer, the stench intensified, and an unsettling sense of foreboding washed over him. There were two bags, one black, one white. Inside, he discovered a severely decomposed, dismembered body. Being the peak of summer, August, the decomposition process had accelerated significantly. The state of the body was so dreadful that determining the cause of death visually proved extremely challenging. No personal belongings of the victim or murder weapons were found at the scene. At that moment, it was even difficult to ascertain who the victim was. Criminal psychology experts, upon examining the dismembered state of the body, speculated that this was likely a premeditated crime, executed by someone who knew the victim personally and bore a grudge. However, regardless of the theories, the most pressing task was to establish the victim's identity, as only then could they identify those who might have had a grudge against him. Despite the severe decomposition, fingerprints were still intact. This allowed them to identify the victim as a 50-year-old man named An. He worked as a chef at a Chinese restaurant in Gyeonggi Province. It turned out that An had not been in contact with his family for about 20 years, and his registered address was actually the restaurant's address, complicating efforts to determine his actual residence. The police launched an investigation focusing on An's phone records, discovering that the last call was made on August 10th. After that, there were no further call records, indicating that he likely passed away around August 10th. The last call was made in the vicinity of a karaoke bar in Anyang. Consequently, the police began reviewing surveillance footage from cameras installed near the karaoke bar and nearby vehicles. The police speculated that they might uncover some clues, and while reviewing surveillance footage, they discovered a suspicious vehicle. This car was moving under the cover of darkness, yet its headlights were off. The vehicle was spotted near the karaoke bar where the victim was last seen. The police traced the car's owner and found it belonged to none other than Mr. Byun, the owner of that very karaoke bar. Immediately, they identified him as a suspect and initiated a manhunt. Just 2 days after the dismembered body was found in the vicinity of Seoul National Park in Gwacheon, on August 21st around 4 p.m., Mr. Byun was apprehended on the Seohaean Expressway at the Sosan rest area, in the same car with the lights off. Byun confessed to his crime immediately upon arrest and was promptly taken to the Gwacheon police station. His full name is Byun Kyung-seok. He was an unassuming man in his 30s, owning a karaoke bar in Anyang, Gyeonggi-do. Byun had a quiet demeanor and lacked close ties with the locals, yet he also had no prior conflicts or criminal record. The most astonishing revelation was that the criminal psychology experts' theory that this was a premeditated crime driven by personal animosity was entirely incorrect. The victim, Mr. An, and the perpetrator, Byun, were complete strangers to one another. So what exactly happened between them? It turned out to be a spontaneous killing, but why was the body so severely dismembered if that was the case? The situation defied logic. What transpired between these two individuals? On the night of August 8th, when Anna's phone call records went silent, he entered the karaoke bar managed by Byun Kyung-seok as a customer. This particular karaoke bar offered the option to call for a hostess, a woman who entertained the patrons. Anna requested such a hostess, but as the investigation revealed, he was dissatisfied with her and requested a replacement. This process sparked a conflict between them. The tension escalated, and Anna began to threaten, "Isn't it illegal to have hostesses here? I'm going to report this to the police." This threat enraged Byun, and in a fit of fury, he spontaneously killed Anna. While this situation in isolation might seem understandable, let's ponder for a moment. Is it normal to kill a person who came to you as a customer just because they angered you? And not only to kill, but to dismember the body into such horrendous pieces? This doesn't resemble an ordinary case at all. Experts meticulously examined the state of the body and concluded that it bore the unmistakable marks of immense anger and fury. This led them to believe there must have been something else that provoked Byun Kyung-seok to such rage, culminating in a crime of such brutality. After committing the murder, Byun Kyung-seok turned to online maps in search of a suitable location to dispose of the body. He identified an area near Seoul National Park, dense with bushes that seemed ideal for concealing the remains. Acting on this plan, he made his way to Gwacheon, into the park, and hid the body among the underbrush before returning to the karaoke bar. He then methodically cleaned the crime scene. Although this isn't an actual photograph, he made sure to scrub everything thoroughly and hung a sign at the entrance of the karaoke bar indicating that the establishment was on holiday. Following this, he holed up in the karaoke bar for a span of 10 days. By the time of his arrest on August 21st, he was heading to the coast to get some fresh air, when the police intercepted and apprehended him. Can you easily comprehend such behavior? It's mind-boggling. His demeanor after committing the crime seemed oddly composed. Even the murder weapon, which he used to kill Anne and dismember the body, was left casually on the karaoke bar stool. The crime committed by Byun Gyun-sok raises numerous questions. His motives remain elusive, his methods brutally savage, and his behavior after concealing the body is far from ordinary. Could he be what people call a psychopath or a sociopath? Or perhaps he is unaware that he suffers from some mental disorder? If not, then did he truly have no criminal past? Could he be hiding something? Numerous experts in criminal psychology have proposed various theories. However, there was one theory that emerged more frequently than others. Why did he do it? Experts believe that Byun Gyun-sok is neither a psychopath nor a sociopath. His actions are explained by a low level of intellectual development and social adaptation. Have you heard of Professor Lee Soo-jong? She's a renowned expert in criminal psychology and frequently appears on television. Based on her analysis, when she listened to Byun Kyung-sok's testimony, she noted that it was illogical and fragmented. This indicates that his intellectual abilities are quite limited. The issue is that he seemed to believe his actions were meticulously planned and highly effective. Consider this. Byun Kyung-sok, for instance, used the internet to find a location he thought was deserted and inconspicuous to hide a body. In reality, the site was right next to a road. Take a look at the first photo. You can see the road is just nearby. The entrance to the Cheongyesan Trail was only 10 meters away. Naturally, people frequently pass by this area. It was a very noticeable location, especially during the day when there are many passers-by and vehicles. Furthermore, when he decided to transport the body, he drove without headlights on. At night, without headlights. Eventually, his headlight-free drive was captured by surveillance cameras, drawing attention to him. Had he given it any thought, he would have realized that driving without headlights at night is a surefire way to attract attention. But Byun simply couldn't think it through. He believed he had planned everything thoroughly, yet it was quite the opposite. This is why experts assert that he is neither a sociopath nor a psychopath, but rather a person with limited intellectual capabilities. Even with such an explanation, it's hard to comprehend how someone could dismember a body so brutally. Experts suggest this action is also tied to his low level of perception and social adaptation. Although the murder itself was spontaneous, Byun found himself in a predicament where he had killed someone and needed to dispose of the body. He likely thought, if I leave the body as it is, I'll be easily discovered. I need to dump it somewhere else. But in its current state, the body is too heavy to move, so I need to dismember it to make it easier. This might have seemed like a very simple, logical, yet limited way of thinking. However, such behavior is not typical for those who commit spontaneous murders in Korea. Byun, with no criminal history and no personal animosity toward the victim, simply kills a person and dismembers the body to make it easier to transport. It's also worth noting that he left the murder weapon in plain sight and stayed at the crime scene for 10 days. All of this, according to experts, is also linked to his low intelligence and social adaptation level. Tests conducted confirmed that he was neither a psychopath nor someone with any mental disorder.